Chapter 2. Lily. Emily Thomas smiled as a text from her friend Joshua hit her phone, since she was already suited up in her gear. She had been just about to text him and say the same thing. They were so close to leveling up she could barely contain her excitement. This leveling was special because it was the very last level shown on the list. Every other level below this one had a string of enhancements or abilities boldly emblazoned beside them. This showed an angel what they would be awarded with once they reached the level of points required to surpass the threshold. But this one had always been left blank, a total mystery. As a select few angels in the running for it got closer and closer, rumors flew as to what that could possibly mean. Joshua and her were the closest to topping out, but there were 4 or 5 other angels nipping at their heels for the honor. They had made a pact several months ago that they were going to try and level up together. They had managed to work it so that they both stayed fairly even in the standings as they inched their way upward. Teaming up had actually been a pretty good strategy, as the level of difficulty they had encountered lately made solo fighting almost certain suicide. But now, if they could both survive one more good campaign, it might just be enough to push them up and over the line. She logged into her account, and as soon as she materialized in her barracks cubicle, she tried quizzing Destiny for answers.
Destiny, what will happen once I reach the final level?
She was not really expecting a straight answer, but figured it was worth a shot to try. But as always, Destiny's answer was cryptic.
Grace and light will honor you with immortal substance.
What does that mean?
The Creator will reveal all, if you prove worthy.
So, I won't know until after I level up.
Lily prodded.
The Creator will reveal all, if you prove worthy,
She had repeated, with an air of finality. That one hint was all she was going to pry out of Destiny. Lily had never heard of an ability called Immortal Substance and couldn't possibly imagine what use it might be. Angels were already immortal, resurrecting over and over if they were unfortunate enough to be killed in battle. True, once killed, an angel was not permitted to rejoin the campaign that had resulted in their death, but they were free to pick any other campaign immediately and head right back out to try and make up some of the points they had lost from dying. Perhaps having immortal substance meant they could no longer be killed in battle? That would be nice. She hated dying. It usually came at the worst possible time, leaving her unable to help her fellow angels when they needed it the most. And the hit to her point standings was always more painful than the pain of dying itself. It usually took a few very successful campaigns and a fair bit of time to make up lost ground if she was killed. She energized her wings and flew down to the Situation Hall to check out their options. She knew Joshua would be there soon, so she wouldn't commit to anything until they both had a chance to decide on which campaign looked best for them together. They couldn't afford to be reckless at this point. If they died, they would most likely be bumped out of the running to be the first ones to reach that final level. But if they played it too safe and picked a campaign that was not challenging enough, they wouldn't gain enough points and someone else might still beat them to it. A short while later, Destiny chimed in through her ear link that Joshua had reported for duty and had inquired about her whereabouts. She walked towards the entrance, watching the skies for him to land on the perch. She finally spotted a flash of sunlight off of his silvery wings as he flared and gracefully touched down. His mastery of flight had been one of the first things she noticed about him when she met him long ago. He made it look so natural and effortless. Many newly haloed angels found the dynamics of flight very difficult to master. Some never did quite manage to make it as fluid as others did, even after lots and lots of practice. They had a tendency to die, frequently and easily. A lot of them dropped off the list fairly quickly, with some not even bothering to return after only 1 or 2 battles. The intensity of the simulation like this was not everybody's cup of tea, but for those that stuck around long enough to master it, there was nothing else out there quite like it. She herself had taken to flying immediately, quickly learning to love the freedom of movement those wings allowed. One of her major advantages in battle was that she rarely had to even think about flying. Her body just did whatever she needed to place her at the best advantage, without a lot of thought on her part. Joshua had that gift as well. He wore those wings as if he were born with them. She stood back from the doorway and took a moment to study her wingmate as he retracted his wings and turned to come in and find her. He was tall and well-muscled, as all angels were, but something in the way he carried himself set him apart from most of the others around him. He had confidence and an almost regal bearing as he strode through the doorway, eyes scanning the crowd as he sought her out. His smile when he saw her waiting transformed his ruggedly handsome features into something softer than the face he usually showed the world when he was focused on a mission. In here, they could be relaxed, be themselves, be human. She realized she was probably closer to him than anyone else she knew, including her husband Carl. Oh, sure. She understood this avatar body Joshua wore was not a true representation of how he looked out in the real world, any more than the tall, busty, and gracefully beautiful body she wore was. But that did not really matter. She knew him from the inside. She knew his true self, and trusted him enough to be her true self around him. In here, these avatar forms were convenient and comfortable. It didn't matter what a person's real body looked like, so it didn't bother her one bit that he probably wouldn't recognize her on the street. He recognized her here. That was all that really mattered. Besides, she felt more alive in here than she did out there anyway. It was a shame these angelic avatars were sexless, or she was certain they would have attempted to move their relationship to a more personal and physical level by now. They were both stuck in loveless marriages, so technically it wouldn't really be cheating. Or would it? She didn't know. But regardless, the VR peripherals were not really equipped for intimacy, and this game environment didn't exactly promote that kind of play anyway, so they were more or less forced to remain chaste. Besides, once the campaign started, there was very little time for any of that. The Dark Forces would take advantage of any lack of attention to duty, and out there, if you hesitated, you died. It was that simple. But it was still fun to fantasize about the possibilities. "Hey, Lily," Joshua said as he arrived and stood comfortably by her side. He slipped his arm across her shoulders and pulled her in tighter to his side as he gave her a brief sidearm hug in greeting. "See anything interesting?"
There are several good campaigns that promise enough with points to level up, but none of them look like much fun. Butcher's work, mostly.
They walked across a wide expanse of the cathedral-like hall, towards a large central dais where Destiny displayed all the campaign statistics in a large holographic image suspended above. A circular line of short columns surrounded the central platform and served as the interface controls that allowed angels to pick and access the campaign menus. They stepped up to one of the vacant podiums and looked up at the shifting display of available campaigns above, attempting to narrow down their choices. The names of 5 major cities and several smaller towns were listed, all with columns of numbers that represented the total number of estimated points that were available to be rewarded, glowing in bright golden lettering beside it. Campaigns were always titled after the city or town where the battles were staged, and points were awarded for one thing, and one thing only: saving souls. The rules of engagement in this game were fairly simple. It was a classic battle of good versus evil. When an angel chose a campaign, they were assigned an area to protect, with a known number of souls within it. Each and every mortal life that was lost to the Dark Forces was deducted from that total at the end of the battle. If the angel was killed, they lost all the points they could have earned in the campaign, and were penalized a set number of points for dying. They were also forbidden to re-enter the same campaign again. If, for some unfortunate reason, all of the lives under their protection were somehow taken by the Dark Forces, and an angel was still alive and able to fight, they were randomly reassigned to another sector that needed reinforcement. Once reassigned, they gained no official points on the list for any additional souls saved, but there was still a way to recoup some of the loss. Any angel was allowed to give some of his own personal points over to another after a battle, and most did so out of respect and gratitude for any help a reassigned angel gave them. That took a little bit of the sting out of failing in their own mission and allowed them to gain at least a few points from the campaign. Destiny could predict when and where the barrier that lay between the underworld and the world of man was thin enough to erupt into a Hell's Gate, which was the only way demons could enter that plane of existence. The Angels' primary mission was to seal that gate off as quickly as possible in order to stop the hordes of demons from entering through it. The longer they took to accomplish that mission, the longer the battle would rage. There were some campaigns that had been ongoing battles for months of real-time gameplay, which could translate out to many years of subjective time passing for the mortal humans living on that plane.
The campaign was not declared officially over until one of two things happened.
To ensure a victory for the forces of the light, the Hell's Gate must be sealed, and each and every demon that had slipped through had to be banished back to the underworld. This was not always easy. Most of the time, the demons had the Hell's Gate so well defended that it was very costly in terms of angels' lives to even attempt to get it sealed. An angel had to be in direct physical contact with the gate in order to invoke the sealing ritual, and that was very difficult to do if it was totally surrounded by demons. The only way the forces of darkness could win a campaign and close it out was to defend that gate until all of the mortal humans in the corrupted lands were harvested. Special bonus points were awarded to the campaign architect if they managed to pull this off. A perfect harvest was relatively uncommon due to the single-minded purpose of every angel that entered the fight to seal off the gate. It took a lot of strategies to successfully defend against that, so the demon who planned out and orchestrated the campaign was rewarded handsomely. And win or lose, the demons got to keep the points for each soul they managed to harvest. I see the gate of Chantra is still open, Joshua remarked. They must have an entire legion of greater demons protecting that one by now. They had both died trying to close that gate the last time they had both been there. That was when the Chantra campaign had first begun, and even though it was not an eligible candidate for them to join today, he checked the progress, hoping to see that the light had finally prevailed. A quick glance at the total number of points left available to award told the story of the toll in human lives quite well. There were not many people left alive to protect in that city anymore, compared to many tens of thousands that had lived there when the campaign began. As soon as they were all gone, the demons would be recalled back to the underworld and the Hell's Gate would close on its own. They could not survive long in the world of men after the gate collapsed. They fed from the dark energy that radiated from it, as well as from the flesh and fear of mortals. So they were forced to return to the underworld once the campaign was over. That was fortunate, because they would have totally overrun the mortal world by now, leaping from city to city if they could exist there without staying close to the energy source. It looked like it would be another great victory for the Dark Forces. That patch of ground known as Chantra would soon be forever cursed. Very little would be able to grow on its corrupted and barren soil, and anyone foolish enough to even try and pass through that area would be haunted by the tormented souls of all the people that the demons had killed there. It would become yet another forbidden zone for angels as well, since the darkness would pervade the very essence of that place. Any angel unlucky enough to be stranded in such a place would be rapidly stripped of their powers and reduced to live a mortal existence while within the boundaries of the cursed land. That meant that if they died there was no resurrection for them either. Game over.
I wish we could have done more when we had the chance,
Lily said sadly, as she read the diminishing statistic that signified the pitifully small number of survivors still left clinging to hope in that once thriving city. We did what we could. As I recall, you banished 3 greater demons and countless lesser ones yourself before the sheer numbers took you down. That's not something many other angels can claim.
You've taken on 4.
Well, true, but not by choice. And they killed me too, so in the end, it didn't really matter anyway. He turned his attention back to the list of campaigns that they could actually join. Shantara was lost to them and beyond their help now. It was pointless wishing it were any different. What do you think about Brookdale? It's a 2-person patrol assignment with a less than 50% chance of a major gate formation. population about 1,500 souls. It's a time campaign since there is not an established Hell's Gate there yet, only the probability curve suggesting one might erupt. It has enough of a point spread to allow for a small margin of loss if one does erupt. We could still make it over the line if we can manage to seal it off quickly.
Yeah, I figured either that one or possibly Blanchett. That one is a major group attack against a large established rift break. But the gate there has already been fully sealed. It's mostly mop-up work now. But there are quite a few greater demons that are dug in fairly deep. Larger point spread than Brookdale.
Joshua looked over the statistics displayed and noted, Blanchett is a mountain stronghold with high altitude physics. Be tougher to fight close quarters in that thin air.
We've fought similar battles before.
She chewed her lip.
But yeah, it's not ideal, is it?
My vote is for Brookdale, he said. With any luck, it will be easy patrol duty and we won't even bloody your blades. She just shook her head.
You know that's not how our luck goes. That damn gate will probably erupt underneath the town square when everyone is gathered there for a harvest festival or something.
Well, then let's just hope you are as quick with invoking that closure spell as you were in Vanasta last month. You sealed that one up faster than the greater demons could reinforce it, so we only had to banish back the dozen or so lesser demons that managed to squeak through before it was sealed. They had scored very high points on that campaign simply because Lily was better at offensive magic than he was. He always preferred her to initiate a closure if they had any choice at all, while he covered her flank when she was exposed and vulnerable.
Okay, let's take that one.
Lily decided. She turned and addressed the podium.
Destiny. Angel Lily requesting assignment to Brookdale.
Assignment granted. Use of all conventional, as well as unlimited spiritual weaponry is authorized. Portal shift in 37 minutes on grid 7. Blessings and good luck, Lily. May the light shine bright on your blade and guide it true.
Destiny. Angel Joshua requesting assignments for Brookdale, he stated, as soon as Lily stepped back from the podium.
Assignment granted. Use of all conventional, as well as unlimited spiritual weaponry is authorized. Portal shift in 36 minutes on grid 7 with Angel Lily registered as your wingmate. Blessings and good luck, Joshua. May the light shine bright on your blade and guide it true.
Let's go gear up, he said to her as he turned away from the podium. A 36-minute bounce window was a bit tight, but if they hustled, they should be able to get to their barracks and then back over to grid 7 with a few minutes to spare. They hurried back through the entrance doors and paused only briefly as they both energized their wings and then dove off the perch. Their wings began beating in synchronized precision from long hours of practice as they swiftly climbed towards the barracks formation, hovering above them in the distance. Lily's barracks cubicle was above his only a few levels, but still fairly close. As they approached the formation, he nodded at her small wave of farewell and they each peeled off to go to their own separate destinations. He landed on his balcony and strode inside to take a quick inventory of his stockpile of weaponry, mentally running through all the scenarios they might encounter. Conventional weapons were sometimes handy to have at hand, so he loaded a small cache of concussion grenades and fragmentation charges into rune storage on his left hip. He also chose a short-range energy disruption pistol and several extra charges, placing them into storage on his other hip. His sword and shield, which were his primary battle weapons, were already stored on his forearm glyphs, and both had been freshly blessed recently so they would be able to withstand constant contact with demonic presence. Demon flesh would destroy any unblessed blade in minutes. Even blessed blades would dull in time, if the blessing was not performed regularly. For armor, he put on his highest level of ablative dissipation mesh, and covered that with an energy barrier that would deflect a hit from most of the offensive spells a lesser demon could cast. The ablative mesh also had the advantage of self-repair. Given enough time, it would heal itself from any damage it might take in battle. He stepped out onto his balcony, just as Lily arrived, her wings beating a slow measured cadence as she hovered a few feet away. Her wings were a soft golden color that perfectly matched her long, honey blonde hair that she now wore twisted into a tight braid running down her back between her wings. Her armor had an iridescent sheen of multicolored reflective energy, its hues constantly ranging up and down through every wavelength of the visible light spectrum. It was almost hypnotic to watch as a shifting sheen rippled across the gentle curves of her body. Its defensive properties remained mostly hidden, but he knew from past experience that this armor would defend her very well from almost any magical attack and was as impervious to any mortal blade as his own.
Race you to grid 7.
She said with a grin, furling her wings in tightly to her sides as she jackknifed over into a steep dive to gain airspeed. He laughed and dove off towards a distant cluster of buildings in swift pursuit of her rapidly dwindling form. That woman could really fly.